extraordinary. Allah has blessed me. Live forever, not temporary.
As a daughter, she is the light of the house. As a wife, she completes half of her iman. As a mother, Jannah lies under her feet. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Bibi Aisha Leher, presenter and producer of the show Phenomenal Woman, every Thursday between 1:30 and 2:30 right here on IFM 88.3. Tune in to be inspired, educated, motivated and empowered on issues affecting the lives of women. When women stand together, amazing things happen.
Extraordinary. Allah has blessed me. Live forever, not temporary.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You are tuned into the Phenomenal Woman show with me, Bibi Aisha Leher, here on IFM 88.3. Today, we are discussing a very, very difficult topic. But the truth and the reality is that this is a problem globally. And as Muslims, when it comes to divorce, it is something that is so painful, that is so difficult. You know, we often hear the arsh of Allah shakes when there is a divorce, and obviously my guest will elaborate on that further. And remember, divorce is it's not like it is a loss. And the purpose of today's show, first and foremost, remember, I am a former educator. I'm still an educator. And when I work with children, and when I see children who have not coped well, I don't even know how you can cope after there is a divorce, because children often, unfortunately, blame themselves. And it's difficult when mommy and daddy who live together in this house are now no longer living together. Then you get other children that I have two mummies and two daddies, and it's a lot of confusion, a lot of difficulty, and every situation is unique. And it's difficult enough that the couple are not together, whatever reason that they are divorced, Allah knows best and Allah guide, and it's in taqdeer. But making it easier for the two people to move forward, for their families to move forward, and if there are children involved, to make it as easy and as comfortable for them. Because if it is not dealt with in a manner that will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the repercussions are going to be faced many, many, many years thereafter, because children, unfortunately, are going to be in the middle. The truth is, whether we like it or not, the reality is that there are some women who do use their children as a pawn, as a bargaining tool when it comes to divorce. That is a reality. If anyone feels offended by today's program, today's topic, then all I can say to you is, it's based on your own opinion. If the shoe fits. But the whole idea is, if you know something that you are listening to and it makes you feel uncomfortable, then it means something somewhere is not right. What do? We inshallah empower ourselves. We ask ourselves, what would Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam expect of me to do this? What would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expect from me to behave in which way? And then use that. So the show today, firstly, is a reminder for myself and for everybody listening in. The reality is that divorce has become a huge problem globally, and especially with our Muslims. And the way it's done, I just have to relate a very quick story that somebody I know, somebody very close to me that I was coaching, after 6 years, yesterday, in a court of law, won custody of his two daughters. And when he called me to tell me, Sister Bibi Aisha, this is what happened, I cried. Well, he was also crying, he was emotional, but I cried. I was very happy for him. Obviously, he did the normal thing that I would always tell him, go read 2 rakats to shukr, please go take out sadaqah, please go thank Allah. But I said to him, Brother Nazir, it's hard so, and he doesn't mind me saying his name, that it had to go to court, because we are Muslim. We follow Quran, Hadith, Sunnah. Did it need to be in court? But unfortunately, this is what happens sometimes. So clearly, the purpose for doing the show is to educate, empower, inspire, and motivate, to make things as easy for the two people concerned, their families, and most importantly, their children. Because when we have bitterness and resentment, unfortunately, that energy of negativity does rub off on the children. You can divorce your spouse. This is if children are involved. But you can't divorce yourself as a parent. that you can never ever do, and making it difficult for the other parent. Either way, sometimes we can talk about behavior that is toxic to the point where people want to end their lives. Either way, like we said, we keep the show balanced. Soon, inshallah, we're going to ask, my guest if he is available for us to do the reverse side of the topic. But the purpose of doing this is to try and remind our beloved listeners that there is Quran, there is Hadith, there is Sunnah. Behave in a manner that will please Allah. Behave in a manner that you are a role model to your son and daughter. Behave in a manner that other people look up to and say, I can handle this the way he and she did, and they will give you dua. So very, very important. So I'm going to start off with Appa Rehana Adam. She is a senior counselor and one of the founding members at Islamic Helpline, and she has sent a recording of some of the very pertinent points that she feels need to be discussed and shared with our listeners globally. Alhamdulillah, global listenership. So we're going to listen to Rehana Adam on these voice notes, and this is the message that she would like to share with everybody that is listening in today. Okay, she's from Islamic Helpline in Lenasia, and she will be now sharing her messages with us. Okay, while we're waiting for that to come along, I'm just going to tell you about our other guest. Our other guest is somebody, alhamdulillah, that I'm so honored to have spoken to, somebody with lots and lots and lots of knowledge. He is somebody that I think needs no introduction, but we will introduce him anyway. He's the Director of Marital Affairs on the Council of Ulama of the Eastern Cape. He's also the Chairman of the Board of Trustees at Masjid Mansouriya in Port Elizabeth, and that is none other than Maulana Shaheen Ismail. So before we get to Maulana Ismail, I think we are ready with Sister Rehana from Islamic Helpline, and this is what she has to say regarding the topic, which is dealing with toxic ex-wives in a positive manner. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Regarding the second question about divorce, where the ex-wife was a victim of probably over years of physical abuse and maybe even emotional abuse, this is where the woman becomes very bitter. So many women put up with this kind of abuse for years and decades for many reasons. And if I had to go into the reasons, we'll need the whole hour. So I'm not going to go into the reasons, but I'm going to just mention a few where maybe she's not financially independent herself, so she cannot move on her own. She doesn't want to go and burden her family, go back. Maybe she has children, so she doesn't want to go back to her parents' home. Her parents may be elderly. Maybe her parents cannot afford to look after her and her children. So there's all kinds of reasons why the woman will stay in an abusive relationship. And sometimes what happens is as the years pass, she gets more and more bitter. So when that happens, resentment sets in, bitterness sets in, and respect is lost for your partner. So when they get divorced, the woman now wants to, she feels very, very hurt about it, especially, the physical scars will heal in time, unless, of course, it's broken bones, etc. But physical scars heal. But the emotional scars will stay with her for the rest of her life. Now, can you imagine if the emotional scars stays with the wife or the ex-wife, if you want to put it that way? If there are children involved, and if those children have seen any of those, maybe he's been beating her or something like that, or maybe even behind closed doors, and the children can hear that there's an argument going on, and then suddenly it sounds like somebody's hitting someone. That in itself also is going to scar the children as well. So what happens is she becomes very bitter, very resentful, because she's like almost forced to be in a situation which is very unhappy and painful for her. So in that case, you can understand her how bitter she's become and how resentful. And so when she becomes an ex-wife, she may want to lash out at him by trying to hurt him back. And regarding your third question, where children are involved, yes, I always say that we as parents, as partners, should remember that when we cannot live with each other and we decide that we're going to get divorced, your children are not getting divorced from your partner. So you always have to remember that even if we stop being husband and wife, we still share our children, and that the responsibilities to our children don't change. So you as a father, you have to ensure that your responsibilities don't stop just because you are not married to the children's mother anymore. In the same token, the mother has to understand that she cannot use the children and alienate the father to hurt him just because she's bitter over the divorce. Many children are used as weapons against their spouses. And when I say this, I'm saying this not only in the case of women, where women use the children to hurt their spouses, but in some cases we have even had to deal with where the father takes the children away and goes to court and says that the woman he was married to for so many years is an unfit mother, and that is why he's keeping the children. So Maulana can elaborate more, of course, on where the children should be and at what ages they should be with the mother or the father. But we have had many cases where he basically alienates his children from their mother. Now, children should not be alienated from either parent because they love both parents. Also remember, your children will somewhere along the line wonder that, if my mommy and daddy have stopped loving each other, how long before they stop loving me? What if they stop loving me? So that child needs assurance from the mother and the father that maybe we are not together as a family anymore, but we still love you, no matter what has happened between us. And she must ensure that she doesn't say ugly things about their father in front of them. Even if she's feeling it, she must keep quiet about it, not in front of them. Make sure little ears are not listening to that because it damages them. They love their father and they don't want to hear negative things about their father. As they grow older, they will begin to realize things for themselves and they will know the situation. But if they, especially amongst the younger children, it is very painful for them when they are alienated from a parent. So I would like to take this platform to say, don't use your child as a pawn to hurt your partner, no matter what you've been through as a couple.
That's a very, very pertinent advice, very, very important advice. I don't know if there's another message. There's another message that Sister Rehana Adam, who is representing, herself actually, she is part of Islamic Helpline, but she's, obviously come on to the interview in her personal capacity. But the reason also for the title from where she is to remind our listeners that the guests that are selected are people who are experts in their field. These are people who are dealing with problems like this on a daily basis, and they know what they are talking about. So I think we should go to the last bit of advice that Sister Rehana would like to share with our listeners, please.
Bismillah. Regarding the last question on what my advice would be to families and women, ex-wives, ex-husbands. Yes, divorce is a very painful thing. It's a very hurtful thing. The scars go deep. You feel hurt and you feel at times resentful and you question why, and you even start doubting yourself to think, had I only done things differently? But remember that especially if you got children, they are watching you, and children, as we know, Bibi Aisha, learn more by our actions, what they see you doing, rather than our words. So if you're going to be ugly and slander your ex-husband, if you're going to be bitter and you're going to talk ill about him to your children, what are you teaching your children? So be careful how you go about with your pain, what you do with your pain. Don't turn it into a negative energy. Don't become this bitter, ugly person. The other thing to remember is that, inshallah, in the future, Allah will plan that you get remarried. Now imagine if somebody is interested in you and he hears that you've been slandering your ex like that. How would he feel? He'll think to himself, imagine if she and I don't get on, this is what she's going to do to me. So rather bear it with patience. You are not meant to be together. Let it go. Make it such that you do not be ugly towards your ex, especially even where your children are concerned, and have closure. Let it go. Realize this relationship was not meant to be, and so Allah gave you the thought to end it. And also remember that Allah is watching you all the time. So if you're going to be ugly towards somebody and open up their sins, on the day of Qiyamah, Allah is not going to be merciful towards you. That, Bibi Aisha, is my short advice. I can say tons more, but time doesn't permit. And inshallah, whatever I've said will be beneficial to whoever was listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ameen thumma ameen ya Rabbal Alameen to Sister Rehana Adams' duas, and that is the dua that we make for everybody in the situation. Think of your akhirah. Ask yourself, I've become this bitter person, but this is not who I'm supposed to be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not be happy with me. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not teach me to behave in this manner. And also, like Sister Rehana has said several times, if there are children involved, they are watching and they are also hurt. Maulana Shaheen, it's actually very difficult to be hearing a voice note like this, because the reality is, and you deal with this on a daily basis. I deal with this on a daily basis. It's when you think about all of this, you ask yourself, I'm sure Maulana is also just thinking to himself, as much as Maulana may be dealing with cases like this on a daily basis, because that is the reality, but obviously you can never ever not be hurt when you are faced with situations like this. When a man and wife are no longer together and there are no children involved, yes, it's a loss as well. I mean, families were happy, families got together, families prepared for this wedding, and for whatever reason the couples get divorced. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But going about bad-mouthing either spouse is unfortunately a reflection not on that person, it's a reflection of you. And when that person wants to get married one day, either one of you, it's the right of the person, the suitor, to investigate, and the truth will come out. If a person X says something negative about person Y, trying to sugarcoat things, you're not going to be helping anybody, because one day when you want to settle down, that very action that you did is unfortunately going to fall back on you. The other thing is that when there are children involved, whether the children are young or whether they are adult children, it's a loss for them as well. They are used to having their parents together. They are used to having certain ways in which they've loved, and ways and traditions and cultures followed in their homes. But obviously when there's a divorce, things change. And no child, irrespective of their age, wants to be in a home where their parents keep on fighting. There is no child, absolutely no child at all, that wants to see their parents unhappy. They don't want to see the father crying. They don't want to see the mother crying. They don't want to be home where there's negative energy all the time. And often there are children who would actually come to their parents, young children as well, and say, Daddy, maybe something needs to be done, or Mommy, maybe something needs to be done. Because the biggest lie we tell ourselves is we are in this marriage for the children. You are not doing your children any favors. Really, you are not doing your child any favor by being in a marriage where you are unhappy for your children. Children need to be in a home that is happy and positive, with happy, positive parents. Children are resilient, and trust me, let me explain something else to you, that they are not silly. Young children are very, very perceptive. They can see what is going on. Young children work on energy. If your energy is positive, they are drawn to you. If your energy is negative and you're pretending things are fine and they really are not fine, your children know about it. And if things are not solved amicably, if things are not handled in a manner that will please Allah, like I said, it's going to have an effect on the children long term. And they're going to take this with them also into their marriage and into their lives and their parenting styles. So we need to fix things immediately. And that again is the purpose of our show. Maulana Shaheen, I've said so much. So I think that we're waiting for him. And, he's eager to speak. And, Maulana Shaheen has obviously so much to share with us regarding, this topic. And obviously wealth of knowledge from his experience. So, inshallah, we are waiting for Maulana Shaheen now, who's going to be speaking to us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Maulana Shaheen. I think I've said a mouthful, and as much as you deal with this on a daily basis, I think every time you need to be speaking to couples or either couple who's been divorced, you probably still have the sadness and heaviness in your heart to say, Ya Allah, grant them ease.
It always leads to a sense of sadness and, empathy that needs to be shown. And In the past, older ulama senior ulama used to always tell me that, it gets to a point where it really weighs heavy on your heart because you feel the pain that the couple goes through, And as you get older, as I see myself aging, I feel, the pressure of that and the weight of that on my shoulders. And I now understand, the challenges that they had to face, in dealing with such sensitive issues.
It's very hard. So, and like we say, divorce is a loss. It's a loss for everybody. Maulana, what does Quran, a reminder, we think we know and we forget. What does Quran teach us about divorce and divorcing women with dignity and respect?
Yeah, look, the Quran generally uses divorce as a last resort. So it institutes different measures in terms of reconciliation in different ways if the couple, intends reconciliation. So it puts in different, methodologies in terms of how we can firstly try to salvage the nikah, failing which then it resorts to divorce, because by then probably the situation would have become toxic.
Yes.
In the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you'll find that not a lot of rationale is impressed upon. That means that sometimes you would have found that Sahaba would have come to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they would have just said something very, very, very minute, like, look, I don't feel happy in my marriage and it is for these reasons. Or I don't find my husband attractive and it is for those reasons. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would not impress on the rationale of that, but he would look at more the peace aspect of the nikah. That means that if you are not happy with this, then look, we need to just adjust, change it. At times you would find there examples where he would ask them, okay, divorce your wife, maybe you should consider marrying this person. So it was a very professional approach without the emotional drama that generally comes with it. Nowadays, because of cultural norms, the emphasis is on the emotional aspect of it. That is why it makes it so difficult. And the way the Sharia has positioned itself, it's given like credence to, different measures in terms of the temperament of every person, because you'll find that in life, and I always say this in every nikah situation or every divorce situation, everyone is different, right? The temperament levels of everyone is different. And the Sharia actually gives credence to this different temperamental measures, because at times you'll find some people, they can only go as far as, we're not compatible, so maybe we need to make the change. I'm not happy, let's move along, right?
Gee.
Others will go further and they will say, look, there's emotional abuse, there's physical abuse, there's mental abuse. So based on that, it is like what you can handle as a person, and in that, people make their decisions. So every person is actually setting their own benchmark in terms of what they think they can manage within the scope of that nikah, of that marriage itself,
Absolutely.
Yes. So, and some you'll find will go beyond that. They'll just live that, let's call it a victim mentality throughout their lives, but it comes with a very compromised lifestyle. So hence, the Sharia caters for everyone in that sense, and it doesn't allow for the emotional aspect of it to become the overwhelming factor. And that is where I think, because of cultural norms, it becomes a bit of an issue for us. It becomes a challenge, and that's when you find that emotions, when they become extreme on either side, then people tend to now reach beyond the Sharia. Then we begin to become nasty as such. We become, we expose very bad character throughout that process and beyond, right?
Absolutely.
So the idea is, what the Sharia is saying is that, look, if it's not working out, then move along, and then, that word comes in place there where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says with ihsan, that you move along, but move along in an amicable way. And amicable, just that word ihsan alone, it's so comprehensive. Because if you look at the different verses of the Quran itself, right, you spoke about dignity, respect, and all of that.
Yes.
It's all encompassing, right? That means that you've got to take into cognizance the mental state of the person, the physical state of the person, the financial aspect of it, the spiritual well-being of the person, so that they don't reach out to things that can damage their iman.
Yes.
All of this in a nutshell this is how amicable is actually defined, You take all of that into consideration, you go through this process, the Sharia institutes the process, and then you make your determination. So now if you've gone through the process, there will be no need to actually deal with the emotional imbalances that will come thereafter. It's a very beautiful concept,
And Malana, I have to ask you this because I'm very glad that you've brought up the concept of culture, because it's scary that when it comes to certain of Allah's laws, Sharia, we take them as we want to use them in our lives. But other things we like very cultural about it. And clearly when people say, I wish there was a guideline, there is. There's a Quran, there's Hadith, there is Sunnah. Period. Finished. So, obviously with the Sunnah of our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may peace be upon him, there are so many examples of how we should carry on our lives. And obviously as everyday laymen that we are, or lay women, we cannot follow every Sunnah of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are striving to. But the few that we can implement, we should be doing. And we should not be belittling people who don't. And we should not be insulting people who do, to say all of a sudden he or she wants to act holy. The truth is we don't know a person's intention, and especially when it comes to divorce, once a man and a wife are divorced, and like you say, obviously the emotional need shouldn't be there. There shouldn't be lawyers, there shouldn't be judges and courts and taking people to maintenance court. That is not what our deen taught us. But again, the reminder that after the divorce, irrespective of the reasons for divorce, we don't know. There's always he said, she said, and the truth. And obviously if there are children involved, then is greater responsibility, because you are not married anymore, but you are still parents. How should a man and his ex-wife behave towards each other, whether in private or in public? Now remember, they should not be in private at all, but Maulana can just please elaborate further.
Yeah, so the thread will continue, right? So once you have these measures in place, that means that you have taken care of, let's call it the mental state of things, the spiritual, physical, financial state of everything, and now you've made your determination for divorce. And you've used the Sharia in that process, right? You will find that then there's absolutely no need for the man and the woman, the ex-wife, ex-husband, to be in communication with one another.
Definitely.
Because this would have been preset already. So the lines are defined. It's quite clear. So there is absolutely no need for them, then to communicate on any level whatsoever, because the Sharia will tell you that, look, now you've become strangers to one another. Right? And in being strangers to one another, then all the other laws of hijab and everything will be applied to you for your situation itself, right? So hence, that is why the solution of the nikah has to be done correctly with the correct processes, so that you get to this point of saying, look, we've sorted all that out. So where you move to from here, you're very clear in terms of what you need to do, what's required from you as well, both husband and wife, right? So like that also, if there were kids, like you mentioned about kids being involved and, the dynamics of all of that, the management of all of that would have been already concluded before the divorce. It should have been such, so that you get divorced, and what happens, maybe you get married again, whatever else, then it doesn't affect anybody else. It is when these things are left in tatters that you'll find that then, the problems do come, the challenges do come, because it becomes very territorial, and there's a whole host of things that happens thereafter.
Absolutely. Malana, in the reality is that when there are children, again, Malana, please, I stand to be corrected, but, the teaching but please, I think rather Malana says this, that Islam has also made, provisions for this, because like we say, Islam is not just a religion, it's a way of life. So generally, when there's a couple that get divorced, who should the children live with? Because if there's daughters, there's sons, according to Sharia, generally, what would be expected?
All right, so there's a general rule in the Sharia, right? And you'll find that when it comes to the Sharia, you have to understand the flow and the temperament of the Sharia. It's not just sometimes certain answers, yes, there may be a yes and no thing, but in general, when it comes to matters of like marital issues, divorce issues, even to the aspects of halal and haram, there's a certain flow that the Sharia requires, or a certain temperament that needs to be understood. So the custody of the children in general, you'll find that the fuqaha, the theologians of the past, they've looked at the the current situation, if you want to call it, at that particular time, and then they've deduced that the custody rights for a son is until the age of 7 for the mother. That means she will initially get custody rights until the age of 7, and thereafter the son will go to the father, right? When it comes to the girl, it goes up to the age of 9. That means she'll have custody rights until the age of 9, and thereafter, the daughter will go to the father, right? Now, the overall thing, though, the temperament of the Sharia is that you have to look at what the Sharia determines by the age of the child, and the Sharia generally looks at the well-being of the child. So primarily, the Sharia will look at the Islamic environment of the child. Which spouse is providing the best sort of Islamic environment for the child, so that the iman of the child is preserved and is not in danger, right? That's the first thing. Thereafter, the stability of the child. Stability can come in many forms, whether it's financial, emotional, and so on and so forth. The stability of the child needs to be looked at, and then the Sharia will look at the safety aspects for that child. So you're placing the child in a very safe environment. Many a times what happens is that the mother cannot provide for that, right? If she cannot provide for that, the Sharia will say, okay, we can reconsider this aspect of it because the father seems to be much more stable, the iman of the children are in danger, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the father should take precedence in this matter. But as a general rule, if things are normal, then it's the first rights to the mother until those ages, like I've explained.
But no, Maulana, when it comes to visiting children,
Yes.
how would that work then? I'm basically going to be asking you questions, there are general questions that we need these reminders. So, Maulana, if you can please advise that if the children are living with the father, how would the mum visit? Because obviously, or what would happen? Because obviously the nikah is over. He's not a mahram to her anymore. And even if the children are living with the mother, so how is it advised from Sharia to move forward?
So the visitation aspects of it, whether it's the father or the mother, right, both cannot be denied visitation of their children. However, you need to also consider the dynamics around visitation rights, because many a times it means going to people's private spaces or whatever it may be. So you need to have clear lines of communication when it comes to that. That look, like sometimes like mothers pick up these type of challenges, like they have small kids, the kids are school going. As a result, when they come home, they have homework that they need to do. They need to do whatever they need to do to fulfill their chores of the night before going to bed. Now you find that sometimes the father pitches up at such a time when the children may be busy with something, which is obviously prioritized for that time, and it upsets the entire process or even the routines that the children are in, and he also does not understand exactly what they need at that particular time. As a result, they're going late to bed, they're not functional in school or madrasa, wherever it may be. It causes a bit of imbalance in the entire situation. As a result, what happens? Ex-wife, ex-husband are at one another's throat. Said, look, you just come when you want to. That's what happens. That's just one example I'm using. It could be the other way around as well.
True.
Many times a man gets married again. He remarries, and now maybe the children are staying with him. As a result, now maybe the mother feels she needs to come in, and at that particular time, maybe he has some sort of whatever, maybe he has supper together with his family at that time, or whatever it may be. It makes it for a very awkward situation,
Absolutely.
That's why, the lines need to be very, very clear in terms of saying, look, let us fix something that is workable, a workable solution for everyone, right? And once you put those lines in place and you communicate it accordingly, then there shouldn't be a problem.
Now, Maulana, this is going to bring me back to something that I think is very important. They always say that after divorce, maybe you should get counseling. But before we do this, what Maulana said is very, very pertinent, that before the divorce actually happens, the parenting plan, so to speak, should have been discussed. So who would be the middle man, so to speak, that will communicate, so-and-so, like if I'm just using names, Bibi Aisha needs to visit her daddy. Her daddy wants to see her, ask her mother, Rehana, what do we do now? Because her father wants to see her and he wants to visit. So who would be the messenger in this part? Because remember, the man and wife are haram for each other.
Yes.
Because they divorced.
So, you can utilize someone from the family that is trustable, and generally we look at the seniors in the family, right? So or what I generally advise couples are that, look, just have a go-to person. And that go-to person can be the ex-father-in-law or the ex-mother-in-law. It just takes a phone call that, look, yes, circumstances have changed. I would like you to maybe just consider A, B, C, D. Can we sit and discuss this, or can you communicate this over so that we can get some sort of understanding in terms of how we need to do this? Because children are growing, so
Yes.
the dynamics will change as they go along, right? But if you have a general structure to work by, you can always just, like we say, we just fine-tune things as we go along.
Malana, the other question I must ask this before we take a short ad break is, when this sort of parenting plan, because like I said, it's very obvious that the problems come in when there are children involved. When a man and wife divorce and there's no children involved, they just leave. But I have questions regarding that as well. But when there are children involved, when this divorce happens, wouldn't it be advisable, like I said, Molana would say, that when all of this parenting plan happens and who the children are going to live with and how we're going to do this, should there not be a trusted alim, someone like Molana, for example, that will be giving these guidelines? Because during that time, nobody gives a divorce when they're happy. They're obviously angry, they're tired, they're frustrated, there's a lot of hurt. So who would be the best person to consult regarding how do we do this according to Sharia in a manner that pleases Allah, in a manner that will be beneficial to everybody moving forward? When does that come in? How should that come in? And how should this be going about? Because there will be tempers that are going to be very hot there. And we want to make this, this transition as easy and as comfortable as possible, but in lines with Sharia, Sunnah, Hadith.
Yeah, the simple thing is you would go to those who you trust the most, whether it's the leaders in your community, the imams in your community, the Jamia, the Council of Ulama, whoever it may be. Someone that's well versed in terms of the temperament of the Sharia. That's the important thing. And I always say this because there are processes in place. I don't believe that you can resolve things in 1 hour, just sitting once and then everybody's forgotten or things get forgotten,
Yes.
Because what happens is sometimes people use the ulama for a particular reason, and once they find a bit of satisfaction, then they do every other thing wrong, So it's a process from start to end that needs to be applied accordingly. And in its application, if somebody is sincere and they're reaching out to Allah, they're very receptive to the application, then they will find the solutions. It is us that, we just weak, right?
Yes.
So hence we find that our application to things is just very selective. What suits me, I will do.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's the idea of it, right?
Inshallah, Maulana, we will be continuing after the ad break. I have so many questions to ask you. I don't even think this hour will be enough. We're probably going to have to do a continuation.
Extraordinary, Allah has blessed me. Live forever, not temporary.
As a daughter, she is the light of the house. As a wife, she completes half of her iman. As a mother, Jannah lies under her feet. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Bibi Aisha Leher, presenter and producer of the show Phenomenal Woman, every Thursday between 1:30 and 2:30 right here on IFM 88.3. Tune in to be inspired, educated, motivated and empowered on issues affecting the lives of women. When women stand together, amazing things happen.
Extraordinary, Allah has blessed me. Live forever, not temporary.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our beloved listeners. Jazakallahu khairan for the positive feedback, receiving lots of positive messages. Alhamdulillah, may Allah accept our tiny efforts. Just to remind you that our topic today is dealing with toxic ex-wives respectfully and positively. Now, toxic is a very, very difficult word. It's a very strong word. But the reason why this word needed to be used, unfortunately, and this is a global problem. Remember, this is a global problem. This is not meant to hint on everybody. The reality is that this is what's happening globally. There are times when, for whatever reasons, couple get divorced. That is between them and Allah. When a man wants to remarry, there are ex-wives who go out of their way to contact the prospective bride and badmouth the ex, or send, very, very bad messages across. And that has happened. There are instances where when a man remarries and, he's now with his new family or his new wife, and the ex-wife would continuously harass them, call them, from anonymous numbers and be vulgar. And there are points where Mulana will agree with me, where a man actually had to put a protection order against his ex-wife. And we are Muslim. Is this all necessary? Mulana, please, if you can elaborate.
Yeah, look, this always boils down to spiteful behavior. The difficulty that's generally experienced with exes, it boils down to the fact that somebody in the relationship simply cannot move on, or the second is that, they cannot see somebody else happy, in them moving on. So as a result, what happens is they'll use different tools. I know we spoke about sometimes using the children as pawn in the relationship to try and, just eat away at the fabric of whatever's left of that relationship. And people generally do not think, at that point in time, the emotions are heightened and everything happens. That is the point that you find that there is extreme behaviors that come out of them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us.
Ameen.
The thing is that I always say that must remember that at some point you have to live. Whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, at some point you are going to pick up your pieces and you have to live. And if you cause so much of damage, in that period, in the interim period, it becomes so difficult for you to live, And, that is just basically spiting one's own self, So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from all of that.
Ameen.
And, again, the Sharia puts these measures in place so that, you can protect yourself from such things, as well as, your own self going through the degradation or whatever it may be, that you know how to remain composed through all of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of, like you say, sometimes there's this word that, my grandmother used to use, that if you bend the rules that Allah has put in place, then afat is going to hit you. So I don't know if that's appropriate to say right now, but it's just something that I think she used to always tell us when we were small, that if you're not going to read namaz, you are not going to have sukoon in your life. You're not going to be peaceful. If you are not going to respect your parents, you're going to have a lot of problems in your life. And that's something that, may Allah grant Jannatul Firdaus and reward in abundance for instilling this in us. Because I can remember this now as a grown adult woman. And that's the same thing when it comes to divorce, that you may have had a difficult relationship with your spouse. Allah knows best. But if you're going to badmouth their father, you're going to badmouth the dada and daddy and everybody in the family, and if the man remarries, you're going to badmouth her and everybody, the only person that you are actually hurting is yourself. And your children are not small. They have common sense. At some point, common sense is going to, hit them and say, but I don't think my daddy is that bad. Because, when children are young, sometimes they can be easily manipulated. But as they grow older, they do have common sense. So maybe like a caution of warning to women that sometimes do that, because yes, as women, we are emotional and we can maybe make it very difficult for our children when they can go to their father's homes and spend time with their father. And if there's a new mother, be with her. Or if there's no mother, dada and daddy and foys and everybody is very happy to see the children. But then sometimes you get women who make it difficult. Like maybe there's an arrangement that when it comes to Eid, so-and-so will spend maybe one Eid lunch with the father, and then maybe the mom doesn't keep to the time. Naturally, the father will be upset. Can Maulana please elaborate further?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Look, you have to consider the sensitivities around these issues, especially when there's so many dynamics involved in this. Ultimately, you are going to be hitting at someone's emotion. Someone is going to get frustrated. Somebody's going to get angry, upset about not keeping to agreements or understandings like that, because there is just no consideration given to either party here in the sense.
Absolutely.
So in saying that, I mean, that is why it's so important to have your lines clear. Your line of communication needs to be very, very clear. Your line of understanding, comprehension, as well as, the decisions or the determinations that are made from a process, to have that absolutely clear so that, and I'm not infringing on somebody else's turf, or I'm not becoming territorial or spiteful or whatever it may be,
That's very important. Malana, is counseling recommended for everybody involved? Because like Aparayana said, in dealing with young children, sometimes they feel that they are the reason, and sometimes I've heard, moms say this, from my teaching background, you were naughty, that's why daddy left us, and that's not right. That is emotional abuse. So is counseling recommended for everybody involved? And once again, who should be doing the counseling? Because sometimes, we would go to somebody who is not Muslim. And is that even advised?
Yeah, I always say again that, you need to get somebody that's well versed with the Quran and Sunnah, because the answers are in the Quran and Sunnah. The problem or the challenge that we have nowadays is that people, they do not find the time to adopt the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah. So we haven't educated ourselves enough to see the beauty of the Sharia, right? Just think, in a day alone, how many times are we actually opening up the Quran to find out about different laws, right? Or different teachings of the Quran and Sunnah, right? Each one of us, we're all responsible for what we do, right? So hence, the first stop should always be at a well-versed alim, somebody that understands the processes, the adaptations, in terms of the implementations of the different rulings and so on and so forth. So if we stop there, right, then we'll find that we will get solutions, provided we are receptive to the advice that is given. And this can be for everyone. We found ourselves at times, we'll counsel ex-wives, ex-husbands, the children, sometimes even, the entire family, when it was granny, grandfather, whoever it may be, whoever thought they were affected by the situation, to make them understand, there's certain processes. It's, because of, again, cultural norms and the stresses that come with it, all of that needs to be considered. The only time we do use like what we would term as, let's call it, when we say professional counselors, and this we term in the secular term of things, right, is when we find that there are certain structures need to be put into place. Like someone was a drug addict and they needed some sort of help for that, then we will then call in counselors for that, to say, look, this is now your forte, this is what you need to do for this person, and just give us a report back on that, and many other instances like that, just for rehabilitation,
Yes, to help them professionally. Well, and I think one last question, and then we're going to have to do a part 2 of this, because there's still so much to cover. But, there are couples that when they are divorced, they are very amicable. I've seen this with my own eyes. Like I said, from a teaching background, there have been parent meetings where the mum is there and the dad's there. They do not sit together, because obviously it's not allowed. But both are there. Both are amicable. Some of them come with their new partner if they are remarried. Some would come, maybe like the lady would come with her brother or her mahram. But they are polite to each other. They would just make salam, come, to me as a teacher, listen to what needs to be said, make salam and leave, because their interest is for their child. And alhamdulillah, this does happen. And also when a man wants to remarry and a woman, because like I said, it's only fair to be balanced, that we do a show on the opposite of this, scenario. But when a man wants to remarry, firstly, he doesn't need to notify his ex-wife that he wants to get married, because they're not in nikah anymore. Even if there are children involved, it's not her business. She doesn't need to know. But if the lady gets to know about it, and there are children that, they do spend time with their father, if there is a parenting plan in place, how can she, as a Muslimah, make it comfortable for her children to now visit their father, and there's this new woman there? Because remember, this notion of a stepmom, that is created by media. That a wicked stepmother, why is it always a stepmother is labeled as somebody, or a stepdad as somebody negative? I mean, we read it in fairy tales, soap operas. Obviously, the West do it to make money and to make things interesting. But why should it be that way? Because, our Quran, our Hadith, our Sunnah has made it halal. So what can a mom do for her children to make it easy for her children to also have a bond with the other, I won't say mother, no one can replace a mother, but say auntie so-and-so.
All right, so the idea is this, right? The Sharia squarely places, the attention on the well-being of the kids, right? In a divorce situation. So if each of the spouses, right, ex-spouses, let's call it that, if they are invested in the well-being of the kids, and then they will have these sort of ideas in terms of how to make it easier for them. It doesn't then become a personal thing between husband and wife. It becomes, or ex-husband and ex-wife. It becomes, a combined effort to look at the well-being of the kids, right? So, in saying that, if you keep that in mind, you'll have maybe 3 different scenarios. One is that you get a very active mom, right? A very active parent. When you have a very active mom, then you'll find that, for, let's call it the husband's wife, that's what we'll term her as, right? For the husband's new wife, you'll find that her life will be made very easy because she won't have to get too involved in the children's life because there is an active mom. You can't replace that, right? She will know. It's when the mom is not she's inactive, that you'll find the insecurities will start coming in because she will see that, look, I have to vie for my attention because there's a new wife in play. There's a whole lot of insecurities that settle in. But when the mom is active, you'll find that, even the new wife will understand that, look, you know what, there are certain boundaries, there are certain restrictions. I just need to nurture this along for the benefit of the children, right? The second is you'll get a semi-active mom. Like sometimes maybe certain, moms, they just cannot be there all the time for their kids. And that's quite understandable with the dynamics of the world we live in today. And that is where you have to then form a bond with the second wife so that you get to some sort of understanding to say, look, you know what, I'm really glad that, we have somebody like you in their lives that can give them the support when I cannot be there. Right? And in saying that as well, the second wife needs to understand her relationship with the kids is not there to replace the mom or to even try to rectify any other issues that she may deem, maybe whatever, necessary or unnecessary, it doesn't matter. The idea is that how do I become the supporting hand to allow for the system to work, And the last is you'll get that inactive mom, you'll get those who really, they just don't have any, vision, no mission or whatever it may be for the children's lives. They're not attentive to the children's needs. In that case, then, that is where the husband's wife, the new wife, steps in completely, with the understanding that, look, we need to give stability to these children. We need to create safer environments for them. And you get all these scenarios that are playing out. Now, in terms of the perception of it, like you said, stepmom, right? So I'm going to call it husband.
Yes, because stepmom, I don't like labels either.
So let's not
yes, let's break the stereotype.
Label, right? So I will call it husband's new wife, right? So the character of the husband's new wife,
ex-husband's new wife. Let's just clarify.
Call it that, right? Or the father's, whatever, right? So anyway, we get the point. The thing is that also needs to be somewhat under the microscope. That means that you do get instances where they become overbearing as well. And then you get instances where they become very, very supportive. So there also there has to be some sort of balance that needs to come into place to say, look, this is how you function in situations like this. This is where you need to, let go. Now, you can just constantly think that, because you're running emotions and sentiments and, this is mine and this is not yours, and you're running all of that, right? And just imagine if somebody keeps on running to a parent and saying, your child is like this and your child is like that, and the child is just being innocent as a child, and the child is... What happens over a period of time? It's like they look at you, you always have a problem with my child.
True. But Maulana, also we need to be very, very clear when we're saying child, because when we're talking about child, our topic is children that are basically minors. Well, obviously, when it comes to adult children, that happens. That's a whole different show. But I think, Malana, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. And, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts, because there are a lot of people that, like we say, when we do not follow Quran, Hadith, and Sunnah, this is when these problems step in. And we make dua that whoever's going through any difficulty right now, Allah grant them ease for the sake of themselves. Because on the day of Qiyamah, when you're standing in front of Allah, you do not want this to be hanging on you. And if there's hurt, make peace with it. Get professional help if you want. Ask Allah to forgive you. But we need to let go of this resentment, because it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to be affected. It's not healthy. But Malana, inshallah, may Allah accept our tiny efforts. And I'm going to obviously have to ask you that you are going to please have to set aside another hour. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you this on radio live. We can talk about it, inshallah, after the show. May Allah accept all your efforts. May Allah grant ease to everyone that is listening. And Maulana, we ask you on behalf of myself, my family, and the Radio IFM family, please remember us in your du'as. And inshallah, may Allah accept the efforts of everybody. Inshallah, ameen. Thumma ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen.
Ameen, ameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ameen. Our beloved listeners, until then, please remember us in your du'as and have a beautiful week. And remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the best for us, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us. What are we doing to make sure that Allah will be pleased with us? Reminder. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi